Привет всем, с вами я, Janie, и это How Janie Learned Russian. On this channel, I take the tips and tricks that I have used over the 20 years of me teaching myself Russian and other languages, and I share them with you here on my channel. I also have a master's degree in second language acquisition and teaching, plus about 15 years of teaching experience in American universities. So today's topic is something that I researched a lot, actually, in my master's program, and it comes in very handy, not just only for when I have my private students in my teaching, but also now that I'm trying to teach myself Portuguese and then soon Polish, as you will soon find out on my channel. So today's video is kind of connected with that quiz we did a little while back about balancing grammar and vocabulary. So I want to focus today on how you build your vocabulary, because I have strong beliefs, and they're based on the science and the research from second language acquisition, about how to build your vocabulary, how to learn more words, and I have a very specific method that I personally use when I'm learning a language. So I am a big believer in flashcards, okay? Big believer. I know there are lots of apps out there that people use these days, but I'm just an old fuddy-duddy. I like the actual piece of paper. I like to physically write something with my hand. In second language, this is known as the total physical response, meaning that we learn things better when we are physically doing something as we learn it, which is why I don't think just staring at a phone screen involves much physicality. And so again, I'm a big believer of these cute little flashcards that we hold, and I love studying my flashcards while walking. So assuming that we're going to do vocabulary with flashcards, I have a big rule. Maximum 20 new vocabulary words on flashcards at any given time. And this is because we don't want to overwhelm your brain. Our brains learn better when they're operating within certain parameters, a certain, a construct or framework. And so if you, and bless one of my students' hearts, they showed me their vocab list and they're just like, I'm just so frustrated. I'm just not learning as quickly as I want to learn. And he showed me a list that was like 400 pages long. Not to mention it was all over their place. There was no rhyme or reason for why did he need to know these words. They were not related to one another in any way. Just anytime he found a new word in Russian, bam, he'd put it on his vocab list and then just painstakingly go through this vocab list and look at the words. And I'm like, yeah, well, no wonder you're not learning anything, because you're not putting in enough focused effort. So that's rule number 1, 20 words max at a time. And you're thinking, oh, that's nothing. I'm going to learn that super fast. Okay, well, listen to the rest of the video, because there's a whole process here for learning new words. Okay, tip number 2. We're going to limit those new vocabulary words to a particular topic. Okay, so you need to have a specific context that you use as your inspiration for these vocabulary words, okay? So you know how I feel about music on my channel. If you don't know, please watch some of my live streams. I'm not joking. I used music and poetry to teach myself Russian. There weren't good YouTube videos. I mean, there was no YouTube in 2003. And so I had to just illegally download, oops, sorry, don't get mad at me. I illegally downloaded on Napster Russian music, and then I would try and find on the internet the lyrics to it, and I would go through and translate it word for freaking word. Okay, so that's how I learned Russian. So I highly recommend taking a song and use that as your inspiration for the vocabulary words that you need to do, or a particular topic, like we did in my video about are you ready to learn the cases. Okay, so maybe you don't know furniture words. Okay, look at your house in particular, because if it's not something that's relevant to you, your brain is going to assign zero importance to it. So look around you and say, okay, wow, I don't know how to talk about all these things in my room. I'm going to learn those words. And then if you're learning something that is physically near you, please make a little label either on a piece of tape or print it out or a Post-it with that vocabulary word and put it on the thing. So back here you'd say kартина, фотография, and there you go. And every time you look at that, you see the word kартина and you're memorizing it. Because the idea here is, according to second language theory, we need to be exposed to something 40 times before we remember it. Yikes! That's a lot of exposure, especially if you don't live in Russia. So you need to create that exposure in your life. Okay, so we limit the scope to create a specific context. So over here, I'm going to take you to when I was teaching myself Ukrainian, and I did this with music. So here on this text, you can kind of see I bolded the words that I didn't know, and then I put their definition off to the side. And because I was learning Ukrainian through Russian, I would put the Russian equivalent of these words. And then I turned these into flashcards for myself. Sure enough, here are my cute little flashcards from when I was learning Ukrainian. Look how adorable. Look how adorable they are. These are like 12 years old. So, these are my old flashcards that I would use, and I'm going to come back to them here in just a minute. But again, we are limiting our context. Our vocabulary words are either coming from an article that we read, a song that we're trying to learn, or a particular topic that we want to be able to talk about. Okay, next trick is you create your cards. And like I said, if you're fancy and technologically savvy, you can do this on an app. I'm a big believer in physically doing something in order to learn it. So you create your flashcards. And on these flashcards, you're going to put, to start with, you're going to put a single word, especially if you're a beginner. You're going to put a single word, okay? And then this is how you work with flashcards, okay? So you start with the Russian side or Ukrainian side first. And so for example, vransi. So I'm looking at this word, vransi, and I'm like, oh, does it mean in the evening? Oh, I can't remember. So if you don't know it straight away, you're going to put it back in the stack, just 3 cards back. So it's going to come back to your brain quickly before you forget that it even exists, okay? So then I go through the rest of my stack. Відчути, відчуття. Okay, good. That means feelings or sensations. And I'm really good with that. So I am now going to flip it to be the English side first, going from English into Ukrainian, which is actually way harder, right? So, okay, good. So I was so good on this card that I have graduated. I'm now going to turn it so I first see the English. You have officially graduated. You have officially graduated from this stack when you can easily go from English into the target language, English into Russian, or English into Ukrainian, when you can easily do it. Okay, once you've done that, you now need to elaborate on these words a little bit. So I'm going to show you what I do, especially at this level for my Russian. I do still encounter words in Russian that I don't know, not very often, but I love to go on and find other words that have that root. So for example, as I just showed you, відчути, for example, in Ukrainian відчуття, see, one is the verb and one is the noun created from that verb. So you can look at and see, here's a chart of how you can do this in Russian. You can see the adjective versions of that word, the noun versions, and kind of see how they're all connected, and then put those on your card, okay? And then again, same process. Do you know it straight away? If not, put it 3 cards back. When you can successfully go from English into target language, bam, you're graduated. Next step after that is entire phrases that you found. And I love, this is one of my most favorite things to do in Russian. This is, I'll do a Google search, as you can see here. I'll Google search a verb to see how it's used in the various types of contexts that it's used. You can also do this with slovari.yandex.ru. So go to Yandex, go to their dictionary, and that will pull up for you the various contexts that it's used, and I highly recommend it. But I like to just Google it because I think it's fun to see these words, come up in the news and different things like that. So then you come up with an entire phrase to help you remember that word. So, and again, these are on the same cards, like just again, so you can see your progress that you're making. So for example, my original was sorочка, which means like a rubашka, or like a shirt. And then I have an entire phrase. Яку сорочку ты вдягнешь? Like, which shirt are you going to put on? Which shirt are you going to wear? So again, that's our ultimate goal on these flashcards. We start out simple with one word. And then we do other words related to that word. And then we do that word in context. And when we can successfully and easily go from English into the target language, we have graduated. But wait, you're not done yet. Now we have to create. We have to mimic the immersion experience that you would have if you were living in a Russian-speaking country. So you need to immerse yourself in the language. I'm not even kidding. I write these out on a poster and I decorate my room with them. So I am looking at them at all times. I put them on my mirror for when I'm getting ready. So they are in my eyes all the time, as if I was in Moscow driving around and looking at billboards, right? You need to create immersion. You need to create it. The other thing I love to do is, so for example, say I got some vocab words on a particular topic. I create listening exposure. So I will go onto YouTube and I'll look for something like, say I was memorizing words about furniture. I would go onto YouTube and put in a key phrase that would say something like «Тур нашего дома» or «Наша красивая мебель», right? Again, you have to create exposure. You have to create immersion in the language. So that's trick number 4. You need to go in. You need to surround yourself with it, and you need to also be trying to produce these. So if you have Russian lessons, or if you have a Russian tutor or Russian friends, try using these new words in your conversation and just try it out and see how they react. Did I do it right? Did I say it right? Are they impressed that I know that word? So you need to create immersion. You need to create those 40 instances of exposure to the word so that you can learn it more quickly. And then this last trick is actually the most important, because you're going to forget a lot of these words, again, because you're not necessarily being exposed to them all the time. So I am a big believer not in keeping a list of the vocab words that you've ever had. One, it creates a sense of accomplishment. And 2, it's really great to just go back and, say you have some time, you're just sitting around doing nothing, go back and revisit your vocab list. And I used to, this isn't a good example of it, but look, this is my cute little notebook from 2004, I believe it was, when I was in school in Moscow. And sure enough, look at these are my vocabulary words, right? It's kind of adorable that I didn't know some of them, that these were new words for me back then. So it's fun to see how much you've progressed and just be like, wow, yeah, like it's so funny that used to be hard for me, and now that's just common knowledge. But what I really love and what I used to do, I couldn't find a notebook where I had done it, where I would write the Russian on this side and then the English on this side, and then I would fold it in half and drill myself and just look at the English or just look at the Russian and be like, okay, do I still know these words? Do I still know these words? If not, oh, honey, it's time to go dig up those flashcards and put that into your stack again, because you haven't officially internalized it. You probably need 40. You haven't reached your full 40 instances of exposure to the word. So that is my trick for learning new vocabulary. Only 20 words at a time. Words from a particular context, specifically, an article you're reading or a song, especially song, because they get so stuck in your head, and that vocabulary is forever. It's just going to be stuck in your head. So 1, limit your number of words. 2, limit the context. Create a context that those words exist in. 3, create your cards, and you go from Russian into English first, and you have officially graduated when you can go from English into Russian. Then our cards themselves have 3 stages. Stage 1 is the word by itself. Stage 2 is the word and other words connected to that word. And stage number 3 is that word in context. Okay? And then our tip number 4 is you need to surround yourself with the language. You do that by visually surrounding yourself with it, putting Post-its around, decorating your house with little labels in Russian. You're trying to use these words in context in your Russian classes or with your Russian friends. And thirdly, you're looking for videos that will inevitably use that vocab, so you can hear it and be super proud of yourself. Hurrah! that's one of my vocab words, and I understood it. Ура, я молодец. And then lastly, you keep a list of your vocabulary words that you have learned over the age, and you're continually checking in to make sure you still know them and finding extra amounts of pleasure as you watch that list get bigger and bigger and bigger because you are learning more and more Russian. Хорошо, это все на сегодня. Don't forget to go over it and check out my Patreon. And remember, I do offer private tutoring sessions. Email me at collegerussian@gmail.com to find out more about those. I hope this was helpful. Also, please tell me, what apps are you using? I'm kind of old. I haven't bothered with the technology, but I know there's some good stuff out there. So let me know, what apps do you use for learning vocab, and what are some of your tips and tricks? Хорошо, это все на сегодня. Пока-пока.